Hello, I'm Alwynne Gwilt, whiskey journalist, and today I'm in a really special location for this next episode of the VCL Vintners podcast. We're over at Hinch Distillery in Northern Ireland, and today I'm joined by Will Stafford, who's the head distiller here. Will, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm super happy because it is my first visit over to Hinch, one of my first visits to Northern Ireland as well, which I apologise for in advance for not having spent enough time on this soil. But if, maybe give our listeners a little bit of background into who you are and what your job really entails here at the distillery.
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined Hinch back in May 2021.
Mm-hmm.
I was brought in to help bring the distillery up to capacity at post-commissioning.
Yeah.
And my role is now sort of all managing the whole aspect of distillation. So right through from sourcing our barley, our casks, our maturation profile, distillation profile, and our future liquid planning.
Wow, so that's quite a lot of things to be taking on.
An exciting job.
Yeah. So if those listeners who maybe haven't come across Hinch Distillery before, you're one of the new wave of Irish distillers, which is super exciting, a really, really exciting time to be in the Irish whiskey industry. But what was some of the thinking behind actually establishing the distillery here?
So the grounds that we're currently on, so the distillery is owned by Dr. Terry Cross, a serial entrepreneur who made his name in the packaging industry, so made a lot of food packaging for multinationals, and he owns this estate that is 161 years old.
Wow. Okay.
Well, 161 years old at the time, 165 years old now.
Yeah.
And it was perfect for a distillery. So it was mainly unused land, but we're surrounded by drumlins and arable land, so great for growing barley and different things like that. So with the space that we had here on the estate, and Terry had just moved out of the packaging business. Irish whiskey was massively on the up at the time. And we decided to build a grain glass distillery here on site, which is relatively unheard of now in modern times, where we have we can grow our barley, and we've maturation and bottling here as well. So Terry wanted a full seed glass distillery, completely under our own control, so we don't rely on external partners for maturation or packaging. So that was the main the main inspiration behind the build.
Yeah. And how did you end up here at Hinch Distillery?
So I worked for another local Northern Irish distillery at the time, and I was brought in, I was approached by one of the senior staff about taking the plant up to capacity. Whiskey's it's always been a massive passion of mine, but I've worked across multiple spirits, from vodka, gin, poaching, rum, and whiskey's ultimately where I've always seen myself. It's what I grew up with, being the grandson of a tillage farmer who made poaching and different things on the farm. So it's something I've always enjoyed doing. And my mum actually took me to the Bushmills distillery when I was 14, and massively fell in love with the smell and the aromas. And enjoyed working with wood. So everything we do here at Hinch, I never seen myself working in a lab. So I studied science, but it was a bit more hands-on. So whiskey distilling was definitely the next natural step.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, it's amazing to be. We were speaking a little bit before, just kind of before filming this podcast, about the beauty of being at a distillery that's kind of on the ascendancy, that's a bit newer, that you can kind of really put your stamp on. Yeah. So you mentioned about grain to glass and a lot of the things that you're doing here on site at Hinch. What are some of those things that are making you stand out, that are a little bit different here at the distillery?
It's mainly our ethos. So just our approach to production. So we only use Irish barley, and we're currently going through a growing programme to bring all of our barley to within County Down, where we're situated. So we're working with about 60 different local farmers who are growing barley for us. Again, it's taken a bit of time because those farmers are traditionally feedstock growers. So that transition from feedstock to distilling grade barley's is very, very different. That's one of the major things that stands out for me. But we have an ultra modern distillery with we may not have Victorian style equipment, but we have equipment that does the exact same. It's just a lot more efficient. And where the world is at the minute, it's incredibly important that we're doing things as efficiently as possible. So we've got a really, really capable plant. instilling all of those age-old practices, and using barley grown within nearly touching distance
Yeah,
of the
it's
distillery is
amazing.
remarkable for us.
Yeah.
So that's the main things for me.
Yeah. And we've got a really interesting bottle here in front of us, which has an unusual word for Irish whiskey, which is peated. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing with peat here at the distillery, because I think a lot of listeners and people out there who've gotten to know Irish whiskey over the years, maybe they've had a Connemara, but I mean, there hasn't been a lot of peated Irish whiskey, although I'm sure traditionally there would have been.
Yeah.
So what was the inspiration and the desire behind wanting to create a peated whiskey from Hinch?
Again, a combination of things. It's definitely Scotch peated, obviously globally known and globally appreciated.
Yeah.
Irish peated whiskey, not so much, but there's definitely a market for it. Again, we here at the distillery double and triple distill. So with our peated whiskey, we've got two very, very different styles.
Yeah.
The double distilled peated been very much so targeted at the mature whiskey drinker, peated whiskey drinker. And then our triple distilled, which is much softer and rounder than a double distilled.
Yeah.
So again, a much more approachable for bringing new people into the category. It's something we feel very, very strongly about. The whole island is covered in peat. One of the richest in the whole of Europe. So
Yeah.
and it was ultimately our main fuel source many years ago. So it's something that we just want to bring back into to tradition.
Yeah.
And again, allow people to see that peated whiskey can be approachable and it can be consumed and enjoyed.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And you personally like a bit of the peat as well, don't you?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. My just where I'm from in Fermanagh, I grew up with peat fires. I spent my summers in the bog,
Yeah.
cutting and drying and cutting and drying peat, and my grandfather and my father both had peated whiskies in the house, and it's something I just grew very accustomed to. So
Yeah.
there's definitely a nostalgic element to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But again, within the distillery, no one person makes all the decisions, and collectively we believe it's the way forward for a large portion of what we do.
Yeah, so how much actually is the production for peated versus unpeated?
So across the 1 million litres that we're currently producing, 60% is unpeated, so 600,000 litres,
Yeah.
400,000 litres of heavily peated.
Wow. So yeah, it's a big,
It's quite significant.
a big amount. And obviously, so maybe walk us a little bit through what you've had released to date, because obviously the distillery came online 4 years ago. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So it came online 4 years ago, which means you haven't. Where's the whiskey? Where's the whiskey come from?
Yeah,
That's in the bottles that we see.
It's something that we were very transparent about. So,
Yeah.
like all new distilleries, we don't have whiskey yet. So,
Yeah.
what's coming off our stills takes a minimum of 3, but very few distilleries release whiskey at 3.
Yeah.
So all of our whiskey that we currently sell is blended,
Okay,
and
yeah.
sourced from mainly Great Northern Distillery,
Okay.
contract distiller who facilitates probably 80% of the distilleries in the island at the moment who don't
Yep.
have their own stocks.
Yeah.
So that's where all of our whiskey has came from, and another distillery north coast of Northern Ireland as well. So who have a rich heritage in distilling single malts.
Yeah.
So we use both those sources for all of our blends. And now over some of our non-age statement blended whiskies, we've been integrating our 3.5-year-old whiskies into.
Fantastic.
So right now it's a really exciting time for us as
Yeah.
we transition out of sourced stock into our own. So it's something we're very, very excited about. It'll be a change in face for the distillery. Our focus has purely been on sourced stock over the last number of years, but now that we've come of age, you'll see a big change and a different look and feel for what our future looks like.
Fantastic. So new things afoot. When can we expect this exciting new whiskey from Hinch?
Locally, the Northern Irish market will see it pre-Christmas this year.
Oh, this year already. Fantastic.
And we're quite bullish about what we're doing. There's very few distilleries, especially in Ireland, that decide to release a heavily peated single malt as their first release.
Yeah.
It's something that we're going to do, and something we are very bullish about. And then St. Patrick's 2025 we'll see the global launch of that non-age statement single malt.
So really at that crux of shifting times here at the Hinch Distillery.
Absolutely.
Super exciting. And you've obviously, though, done very well out of the whiskies that have been released, including winning World's Best Irish Blended Whiskey at the World Whiskey Awards last year. How was that a proud moment? How did you feel when you saw that coming through?
It definitely is. Like we've won an awful lot of awards over the last number of years, from we started selling whiskey back in 2019, 2020.
Yeah.
We've bought well, we sourced well, we've matured very well, and we've brought that together with our blending team that we have downstairs. We've won some fantastic awards. The most recent ones, which is the Irish Whisky Masters, we've just won 7 medals. So we've won 2 Masters for our new make spirit, which is relatively unheard of.
Yeah.
So it was the only new make spirit was awarded a master this year.
Wow.
So something we're very, very proud of. It's the first time we've put our new make into a competition.
Yeah.
But we just thought it timely with the imminent release of some of our own spirits. So the 2 masters for that, and 5 golds at the Spirit Awards as well. And then the last one that you mentioned, the Best Irish Blended Whiskey.
Yeah.
Testament again. Most of Irish whiskey is blended, and to come out on top on those awards for a very young distillery. We have a very young distilling team as well.
Okay.
So I'm 30. The rest of the team are a year or 2 older than me, or a year younger than me. So we have a very, very young team in the grand scheme of things. So it's something we're very, very proud of.
Amazing. Well, congratulations. It's fantastic to see. And obviously, especially in this era where we're seeing this rise of Irish whiskey distilleries, it's it's a great time to be achieving those awards.
Absolutely.
Definitely. And you talked a little bit about sourcing casks there, but also just making sure you're using good quality casks. Can you talk a little bit more about the type of casks you're using here at Hinch and some of the choices that you've made around those over the last few years?
Yes, certainly. Wood's obviously a massive part of what we do. It's probably one of the most expensive things that we do here. That any distillery, the wood policy tends to be one of the most expensive.
Yeah.
We put a massive influence into refill barrels. We obviously buy a lot of first fill bourbons as well. 60% of what we fill is bourbon, and that's split across first fill and refills.
Yeah.
The reason for refills is a sustainability element, but also our distillate and the character within that. So it's something that we certainly want to be a distillate forward. We want to be known for the quality of spirit that we use and produce, and not just our maturation profile. So we're very, very proud here of what we distill, and we want that to be appreciated across all of our releases as well. Being a relatively young industry with a lot of new distilleries online, we have Irish whiskey as a whole has put a massive influence on first fill bourbons.
Yeah.
Which the way things have been, the bourbon industry not dumping as many casks. And the increasing capacities across Ireland and Scotland. The demand,
a lot of new distilleries online.
Tequila for that matter as well. So all of these industries seeing a massive increase in production has limited supply of bourbon casks. So we're very keen to continue exploring refill barrels, and that's not just in the bourbon side of things. We use other casks as well. So we obviously, like most distilleries, we have a large sherry portfolio. We use Madeira. Our owner actually owns a chateau in France, in Bordeaux, so we use a lot of their French oak casks as well. And then a lot of specialty casks for small releases. The next one being Murray, which is similar to Banyule, so again French oak, and a sweet dessert wine. So there's a big influence on those, but again refill as well, because we want our distillate to shine through.
You don't want it to just get masked. I mean, as you say, if you're entering that new make spirit into competitions, it's winning masters, you don't want to just hide that behind what the oak can do. You want it to work together.
We want it to be at the fore, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. And when you talk about utilizing those casks, say like a wine cask or a sweet wine cask, is that for like a cask finishing, or is it a full maturation in those casks and then blended in, or is it a bit of everything?
So mainly, so I much prefer full maturation in casks. Now we definitely have finished but again, when we talk about finishing, a lot of distilleries sort of 6 to 12 months. Most of our finishing periods, because we use refills, tends to be a lot longer. So we tend to use between 2.5 years for a finish. But as I said, most of what we've been doing with our own distillate has been full maturation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So our blended stuff tended to be, a lot of it was finished. So for example, our double wood, that's won multiple awards. It's matured for a minimum of 4 to 5 years in first fill and refill bourbons, and then spends a minimum of 12 months in virgin American oak.
In virgin American oak. Yeah. So it's that whole, where do you find that balance? But also that's stock you've been sourcing in. So now you want to be able to really champion and highlight the new make you're actually making here at the distillery. Yeah, super exciting. So that's obviously a lot of things you're doing differently here at the distillery. I've also heard about something called Proofworks. Can you explain a little bit more about what that is and how you've introduced that to the distillery?
So yeah, Proofworks came about off the back of our hatred for XL and having to manually input all of our cask inventory, which obviously grows significantly month on month. So we wanted a really strong platform that could manage all of our cask inventory, but also our wood history. So where our casks have come from, what's been in them, what we have put in them, how long we've had stuff in them. So full traceability from start to finish. And we came across Proofworks, and they offer a really, really strong, probably uncharted territory for cask management. That sort of full blockchain element. Even from an investor's point of view, if they purchase a cask of our whiskey, they like full traceability, being able to see what we've done with it, when we've filled it, if we've moved it in the warehouse. So again, warehousing and purchasing whiskey can be a very blind investment, but Proofworks enables this incredible insight into the cask movement, the liquids movement, and how we've treated their whiskey ultimately.
Wow. It's I can imagine, as you say, the hatred of Excel is felt in many industries. And how did the distillery run before introducing Proofworks?
So everything has been manually punched into Excel, and again for a short period of time it's fine, but as a growing distillery, managing our own casks from start to finish, and we have a small team, we're a very close knit team, so it wasn't a really good use of their time. So we just want to be able to enable distillers to do distiller stuff as opposed to just admin.
Yeah, and what would you say are some of the main benefits of using Proofworks?
The ease of it, it's very user friendly, and again the team at Proofworks have been very receptive to some of the changes that we've recommended. So again, every distillery has their own processes and way of doing things. So Proofworks has been very adaptable and tailored Proofworks to Hinch ultimately. So we have our own platform, usability. Everyone downstairs can use it. Everyone can see, even the accountants can look at all of our inventory as well. At a click of a button, we can see everything, and we don't have to continually proof it like we would in Excel. In Excel,
yeah. So obviously Irish whiskey is, as you've already mentioned, very much on the ascendancy. After a number of years, I mean, gosh, there were only four players in the whiskey industry for a long time. Has it been? Is it an exciting time to be in the Irish whiskey industry currently as somebody working in it? And what are some of the, I guess, potential pitfalls around it, but also positive parts as well?
Look, there's probably no better time to be involved in Irish whiskey. As much as it is very challenging, like every distillery, there's now 44, potentially closer to 50 by the time they're all built.
It's incredible.
And operational. Everyone's going after the same markets, but there's certainly room for us all. So from my experiences, there's been a very collaborative take on things. So like I work very closely with the distilleries in the surrounding area and vice versa, and we've all helped each other out where need to be, and that's whether that be casks or yeast or something like that. So again, there's a really good collaborative approach to it, which is very nice to be involved in, because everyone can learn something new from another distillery. Again, just the way we do things might work for other distilleries. So being involved in this is incredible. Again, this will go down as one of the highlights of Irish whiskey history. So in many years to come, to be able to run one of the largest independent distilleries in the country and put our own stamp on that, for what our future looks like, is incredibly exciting. Something that very few people get the opportunity to do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And what would you say, to listeners out there who maybe haven't explored Irish whiskey as much as they should have, which they should be, but if they haven't, what do you say makes Irish whiskey stand out? What is it?
It's definitely our versatility. So like our native spirit is poaching, which can ultimately mature into whiskey, but also variant from other parts of the world where single malt is most of what they produce. We produce a pot still whiskey as well, which is a combination of malted barley and unmalted barley, which is our main point of difference. It's our Irish whiskey, and nobody else can produce it. Nobody else can call it Irish whiskey. So that's a massive point for us. And again, the flexibility that we have in casks as well. So unlike Scotland, where they're restricted to using only oak, we can use anything, as long as it doesn't leak. Or lose whiskey. We can use it. So most distilleries have tried other things, like a lot of distilleries have used chestnut and things like that. So something that we have looked at as well. But again, it doesn't suit our full maturation side of things. So most of those other woods they're very reactive. So they impart flavors within 2 to 3 months. Whiskey being left in a barrel for 3 years just couldn't handle some of that. But our versatility and our growing conditions for barley. Again, the end product can only be as good as what we put into it. And we have some of the best arable land across the world, and it's perfect for growing barley. So that's a major advantage to Irish whiskey.
It's basically drink Irish whiskey. It just should be.
Just drink Irish whiskey, yeah.
I love it though. I love when someone hasn't had a pot still whiskey before and you give them one and they're just like, well, when did you put the fruit in? How did that?
It's an incredible spread. And again, a lot of consumers worldwide, like mature markets like America, haven't had much exposure to it other than maybe one named distillery from the south of Ireland. So again, as all these other different distilleries start releasing their pot stills, there's always going to be a flavour out there for someone. Like if you try a heavily peated Scotch and you say you don't like it, a lot of people may not like it. You don't have many other routes to go. But with Irish whiskey, we have there's so many different mash bills that we can use. And again, depending on locality, so Hinch or the Hinch local area, like we might have grown a lot of oats. So distillate from here could be very oat forward. And again, rye, corn, those different things. So different areas in Ireland will ultimately produce different regions or different styles of spirit, similar to Scotland with different regions. The same thing will happen here as well.
I just whenever I start speaking about Irish whiskey, I get very excited. It's a great time. And can you talk a little bit more about, we're doing the VCL Vintners podcast. What is the connection between Hinch and VCL?
We as a young growing distillery, we looked for a partner to help us with our cask programs, and VCL was one of the companies that absolutely stood out to us. Again, their history and over the last 14 years, I think it is, managing assets for investors. We've seen them as a really, really strong partner. Attention to detail and their management portfolio, so the investments that they're looking after for other people. We want people to do well from Hinch as well, and we plan on being a household brand. Our owner's a serial entrepreneur, and he's done very well in all of his other businesses, and we believe this one will be exactly the same, albeit this one's a lot slower than packaging.
Slower than packaging, but more enjoyable, I would think.
Yeah, certainly.
You would hope.
Yeah.
And speaking of enjoyable aspects, what's kind of some of you've been working in the whiskey industry a few years now. What is it about the whiskey industry? What are some of your favorite memories, or a favorite memory for you of being here in the whiskey industry?
There's so many. The whiskey industry, when you work inside it, it's hard to see from the outside. But when you're absolutely submerged in every aspect of working with farmers, growing barley, sourcing really, really good casks, working with some of the most passionate people that you'll ever come across, and our team is no different. We call them colleagues, but they're friends. We get on really, really well, work really hard together. and that's been absolutely the highlight for me. But again, seeing other people grow and fall in love with an industry that they maybe didn't appreciate a number of years ago. But the whole circle, it's the growing barley, making good whiskey, maturing it, bottling it, and our byproducts going back into energy production or cattle feed. So it's the full spectrum from start to finish. There's something good from every element. And again, whenever you're in the pits with people working long hours and getting a distillery off the ground, you absolutely see the good in people. And being able to say that you get paid to do something that's absolutely more a hobby and a passion than it is just a job. Is a lot of people don't get to experience that, and we have over the last number of years. So.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, exciting things ahead for Hinch Distillery, and no doubt our listeners, if they haven't heard of you before, will be going out and finding out a little bit more. But thank you so much, Will. It's been a real pleasure to get to chat with you today, learn more a little bit about this fantastic distillery here in Northern Ireland, and I'm very happy to have finally made it over. And I think we should definitely have a wee dram now to celebrate.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.